A while back I found this template on Blue Sky and I thought it would make for a fun project. Deciding the best game of every year was not an easy task, and I spent the past 2 months playing some of my favorite games of all time to fill this out. I'm going to go through this entire thing in chronological order and explain my choices, so take a journey with me as I look back through the history of video games. One quick note before I start. My goal is not to pick the objectively best game, merely the one I find most significant personally. There's going to be some good games that aren't going to win. I'm going to pick some things you probably think are absurd, and I'm sure I've forgotten to mention some important games. If I didn't pick your favorite, it's nothing personal, but feel free to leave me a comment with all my glaring mistakes. It's good for the engagement. Alright, for completely arbitrary reasons, we're going to start with 1989, and before we get to the winner, let's look at some highlights from this year. Mario got his first handheld game on the Game Boy with the quirky Mario Land, and we got the very first Sim City. Honestly, there are a lot of other games I can mention this year, but there is one specific game that has truly stood the test of time. Tetris. Tetris is the perfect puzzle game. Blocks fall from the sky and you have to put them in order. The game gets faster until you can't keep up and you lose. That's it. There's a purity to the game that later iterations just can't match. If I'm being honest, this is the first time I've actually played this original NES release of Tetris, but that really speaks to the enduring legacy of the game. I first played it on the original Game Boy, but I've also played it on my TI-89 calculator as a flash game combined with Puyo Puyo and against 98 other people at the same time. What other game has been ported so many times and in so many variations? This original version is missing the quick drop and hold feature later games would add, but the base physics themselves are surprisingly solid for an NES game. There are other games in the dropping things in a well genre I like better, such as Puyo Puyo and Wario's Woods, but none of those games are Tetris. And that's why I consider this the best game of 1989. Moving on to 1990, there's a couple of games that stood out. Certainly, The Secret of Monkey Island, a fun adventure game from LucasArts that I didn't play till much later. Mario got his own take on the Tetris formula with Dr. Mario, and the fast-paced F-Zero really pushed the Super Nintendo to its limits. There was also Pilot Wings, an interesting attempt at a 3D game on the Super Nintendo that was hard as nails, but still kind of fun. Did you know this game has a helicopter level where you actually go and fight enemy forces? Wild. Still, for my money, there's only one game that could be considered the best in 1990, and that is, of course, Super Mario World. When Nintendo released the original Super Mario Bros., they couldn't have known how much they got right. They would go on to refine the formula for 2 NES sequels, but when it was time for the Super Nintendo, no mere refinement would do. They went for a full evolution. Putting these two games side by side, the improvement 5 years made is remarkable. The graphics are no longer blocky, they're like a cartoon come to life. The physics have been tuned so that Mario no longer feels sluggish. Super Mario 3's world maps have become one large interconnected world. The levels are filled with creative elements. Yoshi is here for the first time and he is so cool. The game is just packed with so much stuff. I love the forest that makes you discover the secret exits. You'll be trapped going around in circles there forever. This definitely happened to me as a kid. I love the ridiculous special stages. I love the little vignettes you get after every castle. I also love any game that has a look back at the adventure during the credits. This is the game I judge all other Mario games against, and in my opinion, not many of the 2D entries have been better than this. Time to look at 1991. This was the debut year for a little blue hedgehog named Sonic, but his first game's a little rough around the edges in my opinion. Street Fighter II also came out this year, but I am crap at fighting games outside of Smash Brothers. There's also Lemmings this year, which was a fun game, but it's no Pikmin. No, for me there's only one game that I can call the best in 1991, and that is The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. This is the Zelda game that defined the series, at least until Breath of the Wild redefined it. Link's adventure starts out on a dark and stormy night, and a mysterious voice draws him out of bed and out into the rain. We sneak into Hyrule Castle, rescue the princess, and escape through the sewers to a hidden sanctuary. It's not Shakespeare, but this is solid storytelling. It's snappy, it's effective, and it doesn't draw the tutorial out too far. If I'm honest, the rest of the game doesn't really match this pacing, but instead it opens up and allows you to explore a Hyrule that feels like a real place instead of the desolate wasteland from the original. The dungeons are now starting to become themed experiences with depth and items that are required to progress, most of the time. I'm looking at you, Ice Temple. And then just when it feels like it's drawing to the end and you're assaulting a tower to rescue a princess from a wizard, You're thrown into a dark parallel world to face an even tougher challenge and 8 more dungeons. This game feels big and it's packed with secrets and unique items to find. Let's not forget about the music, which is making good use of the SNES sound chip. This game feels like a real proper adventure. Eventually, you and Link will break into a golden pyramid to confront Ganon in a climactic battle to save Hyrule. With victory, you can claim the Triforce to save the world from evil. Yeah, this one's pretty much perfect. Not exactly a shocking pick for 1991, and Zelda makes its first, but certainly not last appearance on my list. 1992 was a busy year. We have the much improved Sonic 2, the inaugural and uneven Mario Kart, and the actually interesting Mario Land 2. However, it's my list, and I have to choose with my heart, so let's talk about World of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse. Mickey starred in a lot of video games in the early 90s, but this one was my favorite. Mickey goes on an adventure through fantasy worlds, turning dangerous enemies harmless with a magical cape. It's definitely a little janky, but the worlds are creative and colorful. I especially love this moment where you find out the water level was just in a fishbowl the whole time. Most of the worlds are generic fantasy, but some of them are inspired by old Disney movies. There's an Alice in Wonderland level, and Mad Madam Mim even makes a rare appearance. And of course, at the end, the big boss is Pete himself. Who else would it be? This game also had a co-op mode where your partner plays as Donald Duck, and that's why this one holds a special place in my heart. My dad was never much of a gamer, but this is one of the few games he actually enjoyed, and one of the few we could actually play together when I was a child. My dad passed away a few years ago, but playing this game now, it brings back fond memories of him. Now remember, I am not choosing the best game of each year. Certainly there are objectively better games that were released in '92. Certainly Sonic 2 is a very strong option. This is just my Game of the Year list, and I am happy to highlight this game in my dad's honor. 1993 has a portable Zelda that was quite good, a remastered collection of Mario games that served as my retro education, and the quirky Rocket Knight Adventures, which I quite like. But for me, this year belongs to the Blue Bomber himself, as this was the year of Mega Man X. I never played the original Mega Man games as a kid, so this was my first experience with the series. For the Super Nintendo, Capcom served up a slick 90s version of Mega Man. The older games are mostly solid still, but they feel like NES games. They're a little more simple, a little more clunky. This is a modern Blue Bomber with fancy armor, a wall jump, and an aggressive dash that makes him feel really agile, which is good because the enemies in this game can be quite aggressive. The Robot Masters, Mavericks, are big and filled with personality, and they do not play nice. Defeating them without their weaknesses is a real challenge. This game also has a semi-hidden feature where defeating certain Mavericks changes things in other levels, like this cooled lava here in Flame Mammoth's stage. Doctors Light and Wily are long dead, but their influence lives on in the capsules that grant X new abilities and the virus that has driven the Mavericks mad. And then there's Zero, the edgy robot with a sword explicitly designed to be better than you, just to give you someone to look up to. This is a hard game that doesn't always play fair, but I did enjoy beating my head against it as a kid. I've come to appreciate the classic series as well, but this was my Mega Man. Let's just ignore how quickly this series goes off the rails. Mega Man takes it for 1993. I don't know if it's the best Mega Man game ever, but it's certainly my favorite. We're moving on to 1994, and this year was packed. We have Final Fantasy VI, the pinnacle of Super Nintendo Final Fantasy games. Donkey Kong gets his own game for the first time, and Rare manages to squeeze in stunning pre-rendered graphics. Earthbound is a chronically overlooked gem that was sunk here in the United States by a bad marketing campaign. Super Metroid was this year, and it's basically untouchable. There are so many truly amazing games this year that picking just one is going to mean snubbing games that I really love. For me, though, this year belongs to Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. Sonic goes on his biggest adventure yet as he explores Angel Island across 2 separate game cartridges that physically link together. This was really cool. This game is big, and not only are the zones unique, each act has its own distinct flavor that makes it feel different. I love all the little vignettes that link the zones together to make it really feel cohesive. The graphics are lush and detailed and really sell that tropical island vibe. And the music, you can really hear the Michael Jackson in there. It gives the songs a very distinct groove that nothing else in the series has quite captured. For me, though, the thing that makes this game special is the story. The moment you land on the beach in Angel Island, Knuckles knocks you right out of super form and steals the Chaos Emeralds. That's how you build a memorable rival, have them take something away from your player. Robotnik's scheme this time is bigger than ever, and Knuckles is always there to trip you up as you try to stop him.
The special stages in Sonic are always a little iffy, but this time around they're less annoying than usual. And I especially love this room you get sent to in the second game that lets you choose which stage you want to try. That allows them to build this great moment in the second game where you physically go to this room. You've just had your big showdown with Knuckles, who's kind of a chump, and now Robotnik's here to steal the Master Emerald. Knuckles finally learns who the good guys are and sends you off to a secret floating island to chase after Robotnik. Metal-Sonic's there to stop you with some old-school Robotnik vehicles, but that's not enough to keep you from getting onto Robotnik's off-brand Death Star. Gravity up there's goofy, and there's this climactic battle against the backdrop of Mobius behind you. And if you manage to grab all the Chaos Emeralds twice, you'll be chasing Robotnik through an asteroid belt as your rings drain away to finally recover that Master Emerald. I really believe they managed to capture a great story with some very simple elements in this game. It's fantastic. One note though, Tails is at his most annoying here. I love the little guy, but he got me killed so many times in this playthrough. But you can choose to play as him for an easier experience, or even Knuckles for a harder one. This game oozes ambition and polish, and it's an all-time classic for me, without a doubt.
I know a lot of people would pick 2 over 3, and Sonic Mania is certainly an amazing game, but for me, Sonic 3 is always going to have a special place in my heart.
We've made it to the second row. 1995 was the year of Yoshi's Island, Donkey Kong Country 2, and the underappreciated Ristar. Ristar? Whatever. These are all amazing games, but there was another game released this year that stands tall among them, and that game is Chrono Trigger. Every so often, the stars align to give us a very special game. And in this case, those stars are Squaresoft's best developers coming together after years of experience working on Final Fantasy to make something new and unique. This is the peak of 16-bit RPGs, with a dream team of developers working at the top of their craft to make a truly unparalleled game. This game manages to make time travel feel logical, which is something few stories, even outside of video games, manage. I especially love this little cutscene where they explain a time paradox in a way even a child could understand it. Chrono and friends discover time travel accidentally, and that leads them to discover the future date of the apocalypse. In order to change history and stop that apocalypse, they have to travel through all of history to find and defeat an alien parasite of cosmic proportions. Each time period you visit feels unique, from the misty medieval period menaced by the evil wizard Magus, to the desolate future where humanity has nearly lost all hope, to prehistory where cavemen fight dinosaurs. This game exudes polish. The music is unforgettable, the graphics are striking, the character designs by Akira Toriyama are very 90s Dragon Ball. I especially love the battle system. This game has no random encounters, instead you see enemies on the map, and then you fight them on that same map without being whisked away to some strange void. That kind of thing is easy to take for granted now when even Final Fantasy games have real-time combat, but in the 90s this was not common at all. This game has managed to stay with me in a way very few other games have. From the metronome on the title screen, to the opening bells that wake Chrono, to the climactic battle with Magus that changes everything. I could talk about this game for hours, and maybe I will someday, but for now I'll just say I love this game. It's probably in my top 5 of all time, so there's no way it wasn't going to win this year. There's simply nothing else like it, and the less said about its horrible sequel, the better. Alright, that's my pick for 1995, and in a year filled with very good games, this was still not a hard choice. 1996 was a groundbreaking year. The Super Nintendo still had a few surprises left, like Kirby's Superstar, and a little franchise about capsule monsters got its start on the Game Boy. The Sony PlayStation and the Sega Saturn were already out, and the Nintendo 64 would release this fall, which meant 3D games had arrived, and the entire industry was shifting in response. The next few years would be all about defining how 3D games would even work, and there were plenty of bad attempts. Classic series would need to adapt to survive, and Mario was no exception. That's why my pick for 96 has to be Super Mario RPG. Alright, let's get this out of the way up front. Mario 64 was a revolutionary game that nailed 3D platforming on its first try. I loved this game. Hell, I used to beg to be driven to MediaPlay just to play the demo kiosk. However, looking back from a modern perspective, Mario has come so far from his primordial 3D roots, but Super Mario RPG still holds up against the more modern Mario RPGs. And honestly, it's so weird that Mario RPGs are a thing that still keeps happening. That was never a guarantee. It all comes down to how Square chose to translate Mario's unique skill set into an RPG. He jumps, he shoots fireballs, he swings hammers, but in a turn-based setting. I praised Chrono Trigger for its unique battle system, but Super Mario RPG sets itself apart in different ways.
The action command system they used translates timed button presses into increased damage or defense, and that makes the battles feel more engaging. The story gets upgraded too, as appropriate for an RPG. Princess Peach still gets kidnapped, but Mario defeats Bowser in the first 10 minutes of the game, only to be attacked by a gang of living weapons from another dimension. Mario's adventure is filled with quirky and memorable characters like this Cloud who thinks he's a frog, or the Toad who forgot his bazooka, or the doll possessed by a divine being, or the dog monster that just wants room service. But in addition to the cool new characters, Princess Peach gets to join in on the adventure for the first time since Mario Bros. 2. Even better, you get to recruit Bowser himself for the first time ever, and he's hilarious! This game simplified the traditional Final Fantasy RPG mechanics to appeal to children, but that had the side effect of trimming a lot of the fat and giving it an immaculate pacing. No dungeon overstays its welcome, and grinding is never necessary. This game even got a faithful modern remake that I would definitely recommend, but the original still holds up. That's why it beats Mario 64 to make it onto my list.
Be sure to let me know down in the comments what a huge mistake I made this time, but I stand by my choice. 1997 was busy, so bear with me as I get through these honorable mentions. Mega Man went 3D and took an open-world RPG turn in Mega Man Legends. The definitive Star Fox game was released. Castlevania took on a whole new life with Symphony of the Night. And the first successful console FPS came to the N64 with GoldenEye. There was also the quirky Mischief Makers, which I do not have time for, but deserves its own video. But I didn't pick any of those because there was something else released that year. An RPG that managed to escape the stereotypes of the genre and achieve broad appeal. And that game was, of course, Final Fantasy VII. Square has appeared on this list a couple of times already, but this is the first proper Final Fantasy. There's a reason for that, and a lot of it is due to the graphics. This game may look a little dated now, but considering a few short years ago, all games were sprite-based, Final Fantasy VII blew people away with its highly detailed backgrounds. Although the character models were a little rough, and they did clash pretty badly. We have this 3D coat of paint now, but the battle system is actually heavily based on what we saw back in Final Fantasy VI. This game was also set in a modern setting, which felt revolutionary after so many games based around knights and castles. We're a long way from D&D in this game. For a burgeoning anime fan, this game tapped into so much of what I loved from those stories. Cloud with his spiky hair and ridiculous sword, Tifa's unique proportions, Barrett's borderline offensive stereotype, Sephiroth's whole deal. He's just so extra, and when his theme kicks in, you know you're in trouble. The story felt mature, and it attempts to tackle real issues like classism with this dystopian city where the rich live far above the poor. You spend the first couple hours of the game locked away in that city, but there's enough story there that the remake managed to flesh it out into its own game. But once you do escape the city on motorbike, you find yourself stepping out into a much larger world. Cloud & Co.'s journey is a globe-trotting adventure as they try to stop his creepy anime war buddy before he ends the entire world. Sephiroth is a force of nature in this game, and you mostly just get to see the aftermath. At least until he cements his place in video game history with his fateful rendezvous with a flower girl, a moment that shocked us all. They really swung for the fences when they made this game, stuffing it with drama and more goofiness than you probably remember. In doing so, they made something truly unique. It's a big, weird, special game that was unlike anything else at the time. Even the next few games didn't really reach the same broad appeal as this one. I didn't have a PlayStation, so I didn't get to play this game until I finally got a PS2, and playing bits of it in my friend's basement huddled around a CRT only added to an air of unattainability for a kid that only had an N64. I love this game for its beautiful and sometimes flawed ambition, and its enduring legacy can't be ignored. There's a reason people were begging for a remake for so long, and that's why Final Fantasy VII is my pick for 1997. It's easy to forget what an event this game was when it first came out, and there's a reason these characters have endured for so long. 1998 was another big year. Rare took on the character platformer with Banjo-Kazooie. Sonic finally got his proper 3D debut. A bispectacled physicist has a very bad day in Half-Life. And Kojima hit the big time with the cinematic Metal Gear Solid. My pick for this year is a game steeped in nostalgia and melancholy, even at the time. What else could it be but The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This title screen really takes me back. There's something wistful and haunting about it that reaches deep inside of me. That's very fitting for a game explicitly about lost childhood. Nintendo took their time bringing Link into 3D. It had been a full 7 years since Link to the Past, and that effort shows. Hyrule feels full of life from the moment you leave Link's little house and explore the Kokiri Woods. Real thought was put into how the formula established in Link to the Past would work in 3D. Verticality is at play in dungeons like the Deku Tree and Dodongo Cavern. Cinematic camera angles were chosen to heighten the admittedly primitive graphics. Story takes center stage more than ever as young Link is haunted by premonitions of a dark and stormy night. Our hero is sent on a quest that leads him face to face with the princess, and their little childhood conspiracy is adorable. We get to meet the rock-loving Goron and save them from lack of rocks? Why are Goron issues always dumb? The Zora get redesigned into a sleek, modern form, and Link heroically dives into their guardian whale thing for a creepy dungeon to rescue their tsundere princess. These child dungeons all have so much character and tie into the plot so well. Once we gather the 3 sacred stones, we find Link's nightmares come true as Link comes face to face with Ganon's human form for the first time. Ganondorf clearly doesn't see Link as much of a threat, so that gives us a chance to escape and open the Temple of Time to claim the Master Sword. But upon claiming the sword, Link is trapped for 7 years while Ganon claims the Triforce and devastates the world. I love that this allows us to see what will happen if Link fails, the devastation Ganon brings to Hyrule. It really sells the stakes. As an adult, Link gets to reconnect with all the friends he accidentally left behind and tackle tougher dungeons like the creepy Shadow Temple, the convoluted Water Temple, and the multi-part Spirit Temple that has to be tackled as a child and an adult. These dungeons are so well constructed with clever puzzles and striking visuals. Once they are complete, Link uncovers the mysterious Sheik's secret identity and confronts Ganondorf in his floating citadel of doom. The fight with Ganondorf is so epic, from his melodramatic organ playing to the reveal of his demonic pig form in a great callback to the older games. With some help from Zelda, Link is able to banish Ganon, save Hyrule, and recover his lost childhood. Controls might be a little clunky, but if you can look past that, this game is still a classic. It's one of the best games in the entire series and easily makes my list for 1998. Look at that, for the first time in 3 videos, I didn't pick a Square RPG.
It's 1999, that means the decade is coming to an end and gaming is only growing. This was the year Nintendo took a big swing by letting their most popular characters beat the stuffing out of each other and also sent them golfing. Pokemon's second generation improved greatly on the original. Rare pushed DK way too far. Over on the PC, we had the seminal Age of Empires 2. And this is the point where I started listing games I never played in the speed round. Tony Hawk became a video game icon, the next Final Fantasy was released, the ambitious but boring Shenmue came out, Ken Levine's System Shock came out, and the pivotal MMORPG EverQuest launched.
I'll be honest, I really considered Smash Brothers for this year, but there was something else that stood out more to me. Roller Coaster Tycoon. I grew up in Ohio with access to both Kings Island and Cedar Point, so roller coasters are kind of in my blood. And this game really scratches that itch. The banner feature here is absolutely the roller coaster designer, which lets you build whatever bizarre creation you desire. There is such a simple joy to setting these things up and watching the trains run on tracks you designed yourself. This game does have a whole park simulator built in and a bunch of challenging scenarios to try, but I'll be honest, as a kid, it was really just about the roller coasters. If for some reason you don't love designing roller coasters, there are prefab options you can pick from, but honestly at that point, what are you even doing? I spent hours as a kid designing the most convoluted roller coasters imaginable and all kinds of designs that would never work in real life. All to please these fickle little guys running around my amusement park. If they ever get too picky, you can always just chuck them in a lake. As a side note, the state of Roller Coaster Tycoon in 2025 is not great. I purchased the game on both Steam and GOG, and neither of them would run for me. So if any of this looks off to you, that's because I had to run the open source Roller Coaster Tycoon project just to get footage. But the difference between Roller Coaster 2 and Roller Coaster 1 are very minimal. As always, I pick these games with my heart, and that kinetic complexity of a park full of roller coasters running that I built myself just makes my brain go brrrr. That's enough to make Roller Coaster Tycoon my pick for 1999. I do have an affinity for games about mechanics and logistics that's not really going to come into play until later on in this list. It's a new millennium, and it's the last big year for the N64. Banjo and Kazooie get a big complicated sequel, James Bond gets replaced by a girl made of the finest 64-bit polygons available, and Mario goes flat for his next RPG adventure. Over on the PC, we have some big games that I didn't play with Diablo 2 and Deus Ex, and one I did play with the ambitious life management game, The Sims. But keen viewers might have noticed a game I haven't mentioned yet, a singularly unique and creepy Zelda game unlike any other, Majora's Mask. Believe me when I say this was a difficult decision. I truly love Majora's Mask, and I have so much respect for what it achieves. But in my heart, there is something else I long for, a game that is truly special. No, this time we need to take to the sky for Skies of Arcadia. Arcadia is a world of endless sky. Fish soar gracefully through the air, storms roam the sky and shape the aerial geography, and humans live on floating islands dotted around the sky. And how do they get anywhere in this world? Airships, obviously. We enter this world in a clear homage to Star Wars, a small white ship being chased by a large, imposing black one. But that's okay, our heroes are here to help, and boy are they anime. Vice and Ica are sky pirates, but they're the good kind, obviously. Skies of Arcadia is an RPG with a pretty basic battle system with a few unique twists. Combat is turn-based, but how much you can do each turn is managed by this focus meter. There's also an elemental system at play that ties into the 6 moons of this world. Those moons do more than just power combat. Each society that was built under them takes their influence, from the tropical jungle under the green moon to the tundra under the icy purple moon. The thing that this game gets so right is the scale of the adventure. You start off in this little dinghy trying to rescue that mysterious girl, then after a run-in with a colossal whale you get press-ganged into work on a proper ship. However, the game really kicks into gear a couple of hours later when you commandeer the Empire's shiny new prototype ship. Now that you have the coolest ship in the sky, you spend the game recruiting quirky crew members that each provide unique bonuses, building your own private base on a desert island, and uncovering the mysteries at the heart of the world. Oh, and did I mention the ship combat? This is turn-based too, but with its own separate system with a strategic layer that lets you plan your moves ahead and catch your enemies off guard. The camera swoops around gracefully to capture the action as you work to outmaneuver your foes. Like most games released on the Dreamcast, this game was criminally underappreciated, and even this GameCube port I am playing didn't sell very well. This game is filled with so much heart, so much spirit, so many unique ideas that you can tell the developers crafted it with real care. This game truly feels like a swashbuckling adventure through a world full of discoveries, and it deserves to be known by more people. Adventure, airships, anime, what more could I ask from a game of the year? There's been some recent rumors that Sega's planning on doing something new with Skies of Arcadia, which would be exciting, but I'm not getting my hopes up. I'll probably have to do a longer video on this game in the future. We've reached 2001 and we have a whole new generation of consoles to talk about. The GameCube, the PS2, and the Xbox were much higher fidelity than the first 3D consoles, so we're out of that awkward phase, and there's a lot of great games, so we're going to have to go quick. The GameCube had a solid launch year with Luigi's Mansion, Pikmin, Animal Crossing, Super Monkey Ball, and a bigger and better Smash Bros. The original Halo released and single-handedly made the Xbox into a success, but I never liked it. On the PlayStation, Dante debuted in Devil May Cry, GTA 3 takes the series into 3D and mainstream success, Kojima pulled one of the biggest bait and switches of all time with Metal Gear Solid 2, Konami found a second success by hiding all their horror in the fog with Silent Hill 2, and the underrated FF10 tells a good story with some patchy voice direction. Meanwhile, the Dreamcast is still limping along with Sonic Adventure 2, the game that got a surprisingly good movie adaptation last year. And I haven't forgotten about the handhelds, because the Game Boy Advance is finally out and had a solid first year with games like Golden Sun and the very good Wario Land 4. This probably says a lot about me, but I didn't pick any of those games. No, my pick this year was Jak and Daxter. This one may surprise you, because I snub Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie for RPGs, but I love a good platformer. For me, it's all about an interesting world and a fun kinetic moveset to explore with.
Hey! Get out of here! I'm a Wario. I'm gonna win.
What?
I'm a #1. Here we go.
Okay, I guess my pick for 1991 is Wario Land 4. Well, I guess we're really doing this. In Wario Land 4, our antihero learns about a hidden pyramid, and being Wario, he heads off in search of treasure. The thing that makes this game unique is the way the levels are structured. The goal in each one is to find this key, which is also a ghost. But to escape the level, you have to hit this frog timer and race back to the entrance before the time runs out. The thing that makes this so clever is you spend the first half of each level learning the layout. You get to take your time, explore, solve puzzles, look for treasure. Then you hit that timer and all hell breaks loose as you book it back towards the entrance. I know timers really stress people out in games, but I love the frantic energy it adds here. They often change up the level in the return trip too, giving you more direct routes back, or sometimes completely different routes. Wario's moveset really emphasizes his strength. He's got the shoulder bash, a ground pound, and this wild dash move that builds up momentum and crashes right through obstacles. Racing back to the start like this feels great. In a returning feature from previous Wario Land games, some enemies inflict status effects on Wario that are like cursed power-ups. Getting stung makes Wario float, getting squashed turns him into a pogo stick, eating too much makes him fat. It's all very cartoony, and I love it. This game has a lot of style for a GBA game. Wario is so expressive. There's this weird cat that keeps following you around. You can buy a smile from the shop for free. And the end of the world bosses are so big and animated. Like any good Wario game, it's all about the treasure, and at the end you escape with the prize. I guess there's a princess too? Whatever. Look at that bag of gold! I really love how dumb and brash Wario is. He makes the games he stars in so much fun. All joking aside, this is a tight platformer with some really creative levels, so in the end I really had to give it to Wario for 2001. I know right now a lot of you are thinking about other games that you feel deserve this a lot more. But one thing I truly believe is that a good game doesn't have to be a big game. And I feel like if the industry figured that out, they'd be a lot better off.
Have a rotten day.
Wario, stop taunting the viewers and get out of here. We still have a lot of games to cover.
Fine. Mamma mia.
It's 2002 and there's a lot of great games to mention. The GameCube had Mario Sunshine, a flawed game that suffered from cut content, and the very weird Eternal Darkness. PlayStation had the very stylish and much improved GTA Vice City, and the surprisingly successful Kingdom Hearts. On the PC, we had Warcraft 3, a game I only know about because of LAN parties where we were defending the Moo Moo. And on the Game Boy Advance, we had Pokemon Gen 3, and finally, a new Metroid game with Metroid Fusion. But that wasn't the only Metroid game this year. Down in Texas, the Unknown Retro Studios had impressed Miyamoto, and that earned them the chance to try bringing video gaming's most famous bounty hunter into 3D with Metroid Prime. The first thing to understand about this game is that at the time, nobody thought it was going to work. Metroid had always been 2D and had never been Nintendo's most popular series. How could it possibly work in 3D? How would an unknown Western developer pull this off? The answer Retro provided was more elegant and confident than anyone could have expected. For starters, this game puts us right in Samus's helmet. The UI rendered as elements of her suit. They included little touches to emphasize Samus's presence in the world, like steam condensing on the mask or brief flashes of her eyes in certain lighting. Halo had just released the year before and introduced the world to what a twin-stick console RPG could be, but Retro Studios showed a different possibility. They kinda had to, because this little C-stick thing wasn't up for the task. Instead, Prime combat is mostly based on the lock-on mechanic, a trick taken from Zelda to simplify and focus combat in 3D space. Samus can plant her feet and aim, but that's rarely required. You'll spend most of your time circle strafing and dodging around enemies. Appropriate for a character like Samus, known for being agile. This works pretty well, and they take account for this when they were designing the enemies. However, I will note that in the Switch remaster I'm playing here, they added a proper twin-stick option, and it makes the whole game feel a lot more smooth. This game also makes the intelligent choice to transition into third person when Samus goes into her iconic Morph Ball ability, allowing them to do some classic 3D sections. The most surprising part of this game, though, is probably how they chose to adapt the classic game structure, which is to say, they just copied it wholesale. We have a starting area, so you get the chance to experience Samus's full tool set, an accident that strips her of power, a world to explore and gather equipment and abilities, gated access to areas based on those abilities. It all just works. This was the game that proved that the classic Metroidvania design works fine in 3D. The slick graphics Retro squeezed onto that tiny disc elevate the whole experience, immersing you in the lush landscape and dark interiors of Talon 4. New to the series is the scanning mechanic, which allows you to learn about the flora and fauna around you as well as the mysterious Chozo. I especially enjoy these logs from the space pirates that get increasingly concerned as Samus progresses. Outside of the space pirates, most of the enemies and bosses in this game are new, although of course the Metroids are here, and Ridley is hanging around to loom threateningly over the proceedings. Metroid Prime is a true triumph from a team that had made nothing to note up till then. It finally gave Samus a chance to be a star, and I can't wait to finally get Metroid Prime 4 someday. It's 2003 and there's so many games we have to go quick. Wind Waker was underrated, F-Zero GX was tough as nails but fair, Beyond Good and Evil will never get a sequel, Mario and Luigi had a new take on a Mario RPG, Wario got a new, even weirder series with WarioWare, Prince of Persia was reborn with Sands of Time, arcade games showed some life finally with Geometry Wars, Jack got a gun and learned to talk, the best Star Wars game ever was released, and Ratchet & Clank went commando. But unfortunately for all of those games, one of my favorite video games of all time was released this year. A game I have sunk countless hours into and have an undying love for. Buckle up, because it's time to talk about SSX3. In my experience, if people remember SSX at all, it's because of Tricky, which is just wrong. Tricky was a good game, but 3 outclasses it in every way. Let's start with the mountain, because this is one big connected mountain with 3 distinct peaks turned into a snowboarding wonderland. They worked to make this game feel like a real ski lodge, with transition zones that have a lodge and paths to different courses, and DJ Atomica chiming in with color commentary.
What's going on around town? Well, I'll tell you. The Three Peak Drive-In wants everyone to know that, regardless of the weather, they are open.
3 takes the gameplay from tricky and sands off the rough edges until the gameplay is silky smooth. And damn, does this game feel great to play when you know what you were doing. Shredding down the mountain, hitting massive jumps, and pulling off insane tricks. It's a real rush. I can't snowboard to save my life, and this game is the closest I will ever get. All the weirdos from Tricky are back with a few new ones, and they all have larger-than-life personalities. I especially love Simon because he is so unhinged, but I have to go with my girl Cowrie. The slopes in this game start off relatively slow and gentle at the bottom of the mountain, but as you work your way up, they get more and more aggressive until you are fighting a blizzard above perilous chasms just to pull off the most ill tricks imaginable. There's also this fun dichotomy between the managed event courses and the wild, untamed backcountry. One of my favorite bits is that you can actually board all the way from the highest peak down to the city at the bottom in one continuous run without a single load. In between the race and trick events, you can explore the mountain at your leisure, finding snowflakes for extra cash and unique challenges. They also have this cool session feature which allows you to load up specific parts of the mountain quickly. It's so useful. I love this game in a way that I can't fully describe. The whole thing just feels so well made and cohesive. Playing it feels like a joy, and it empowers you to feel so cool. Oh, and I have to mention the music. They got so many of the finest early 2000 punk tracks, and it fits so well. These songs live rent-free in the back of my head, but Way Away by Yellowcard is absolutely my favorite. It is a tragedy to me that this series has been forgotten. Even the reboot was ages ago, and it wasn't nearly as good. In the end, there wasn't going to be anything that could topple SSX3 for me, so it was always going to be my pick for 2003. I can and will gush about this game for hours, but for now, I'll leave it there. 2004 was another great year for gaming. Mario gets another RPG in the excellent Thousand Year Door, Pikmin gets bigger and better with Pikmin 2, a whole new Snake gets naked in the jungle with Metal Gear Solid 3, we got one of the best movie games of all time with Spider-Man 2, the weird and wonderful Katamari Damacy came out, there's Halo 2, a game I've heard had an obnoxious cliffhanger, 2 new Metroid games with Prime 2 and Zero Mission, the groundbreaking return of Gordon Freeman with Half-Life 2, Warcraft gets its big moment with World of Warcraft, and then there's the charming Cave Story, a creative pixel throwback made by a single man. In the midst of all of those games, how am I to pick a winner? Well, it would have to be something big. A game with an expansive world stuffed with things to do. A game that builds upon what came before it. One with the power to pull in big-name actors. A game that looks to tell a story about family, trust, betrayal, and ambition. That's right, we're finally talking about GTA because it's the year of Grand Theft Auto: San Andreas. My history with GTA began playing 3 in a friend's basement. I did own Vice City, and I played the hell out of it, but nothing could prepare me for San Andreas. From the moment our hero, Carl Johnson, sets foot back in Los Santos, the corrupt cop Samuel L. Jackson is there to blackmail him. While the previous 2 GTA games were all about the mob, this game is all about early 90s LA gangs, and it isn't long before CJ is getting tied up in Grove Street business, helping his homies, tagging up turf, and beefing with his rival gang, the Ballers, all to earn the respect he lost. Which is to say, to fill up this respect meter. Boy, this game has a lot of meters. They really jammed the RPG mechanics into this one, but honestly, they don't do too much. If this game was just about gang warfare, it would not be my pick, but just as that plotline is heating up, CJ gets betrayed, everything goes south, and he's exiled to the boonies. This is where this game diverges from a traditional GTA, because we are out of the city for the first time. In fact, that San Andreas in the title isn't a city, it's a whole damn state, with 3 full cities that are pastiches of LA, San Francisco, and Las Vegas, with miles of country in between. We've come a long way from the kind of bland Liberty City and the isolated islands of Vice City. To take back Grove Street and save his brother, CJ's gonna have to work with some real characters. From the stoned hippie to the blind triad boss to the corrupt CIA agent, CJ's always getting pulled in weird directions. Rockstar always works to dangle something new and interesting in front of you, whether it's the weird missions or the endless side content or the numerous collectibles. More than anything, it's that maximalist energy that I love about this game, and I could list off a dozen memorable missions, like the time CJ has to steal a jetpack from Area 51. This game's trying to say something meaningful about what it's like to be in a gang, but the story's kind of corny and the voice lines are meme-worthy. If you take the whole thing as sort of a cartoonish pastiche, it works much better. In my opinion, San Andreas is the best GTA they've ever made. And yes, that includes 4 and 5, if I'm the one making the decisions. I just hope they manage to build something cool when they finally release GTA 6. We've made it to 2005, let's see what the big releases were. Double Fine delved into the mind to give us the very creative Psychonauts. A whole new genre of plastic instruments was kicked off with Guitar Hero. The surprisingly influential LEGO Star Wars came out. A new star and a new god was born in God of War. The starkly beautiful Shadow of the Colossus haunted us with its tragic quest. And Sora saved even more Disney worlds in Kingdom Hearts 2. Oi, that Roxas intro though. But Capcom cooked up something special this year. They gave an old survival horror series a modern action refresh that, appropriately, breathed new life into it. That game, of course, is Resident Evil 4. First of all, it's easy to forget that this game was originally a GameCube exclusive. Look at these two tiny discs! I have to imagine this game was controversial with RE fans at the time, but seeing as I had never played a Resident Evil before, all I knew was that this game kicks ass. Pretty boy Leon here is somehow the US president's most trusted agent, and he's sent into Spain to rescue his kidnapped daughter. This game gets into gear quickly, throwing you into combat with crazed locals after very little preamble. I have to say, coming off the recent and very good remake, combat here does feel a little clunky. Leon has to stand completely still while shooting, so you have to be decisive when you choose to fight. This feels like a concession to RE's more slow-paced roots, but they throw so many enemies at Leon in scenes like this early village scene that things can get overwhelming quickly. The aiming itself does take some getting used to, but the way the enemies react to getting shot feels great. This game absolutely feels less like a horror movie and much more like an action movie, but that's not a complaint. Leon can carry more guns and ammo than any RE protagonist before him, and he will have to use all of them in these big set pieces just to stay alive. We do still have that dark, moody scenery, and there's still a sense of creeping dread, but the challenge rises to Leon's improved skills. He faces off against some pretty massive enemies, hordes of villagers with improvised weapons, chainsaw-wielding lunatics, and that's all before night falls and Las Plagas is revealed. There are no zombies in this game. Instead, we have these parasitic menaces that sprout from heads to reanimate corpses into horrifying eldritch monstrosities. In between the chaos of combat, the pace does slow, giving you a chance to scrounge for ammo and treasure, which you use to buy upgrades from this weird shopkeeper.
Got something that might interest you.
The game does show its age in places. Opening the menu to switch guns every time is a chore, but I did enjoy the Tetris-style attaché case. You've probably noticed the graphics look a little muddy and low resolution on this GameCube original. Some people also take issue with Ashley once you rescue her, but I always found her likable and not too difficult to keep alive. It's always funny when the game lets you just shove her in a cupboard for a while. I don't even have time to cover the castle or island portions of this game, which each have their own unique feel. I'll just say that RE4 was a groundbreaking game that introduced me to a whole new franchise, and even if most of the other games aren't nearly as good, that makes it more than good enough to be my game of 2005. It's 2006 and we're moving into the HD generation. 360 already released back in 2005, and the PS3 and the Wii both released this fall, 1 week apart. This generation was honestly wild, with Nintendo's motion control surprising everyone, and the PS3's unique chip architecture making it really hard to program for. Those two factors combined to make the Xbox the default console for quite a few years, especially in the West. But I know what you're here for. What about the games? The Wii's release, of course, brought us Wii Sports, a game that felt revolutionary and caught everyone's attention, but was ultimately kind of shallow. We also got a new Zelda game with Twilight Princess and the tacked-on motion controls. This one was a little underwhelming, but I love Midna. Over on the handheld, Pokemon moved to the DS for Gen 4 and featured new evolutions for old Pokemon. The PS2 still had some bangers coming out, with a new Final Fantasy that really wants to be an MMO, a GTA game that goes back to school with Bully, and Atlas with a very different take on high school in Persona 3. In actually next-gen games, Gears of War introduced cover shooting to the masses with their waist-high walls, Elder Scrolls went to the capital with Oblivion, and Capcom stuffed a mall full of zombies in Dead Rising. But my pick this year is a testament to the fact that mere polygons don't make for a better game. Hideki Kamiya and Clover Studios released a game this year that abandoned realism to give us a true work of art. Of course, I'm talking about Okami. We'll start with a quick Japanese lesson. Welcome back to Learning Japanese. In today's lesson, we're covering this kanji here, which means Okami, or wolf. And sure enough, this game stars the adorable white wolf Amaterasu, who also happens to be the creator of all life in traditional Shinto myth. Every aspect of this game is dripping with Japanese culture, right down to the woodblock print-inspired art. In an era where games were going more brown and gray, Okami is brimming with color and life. Structurally, this game is a little like a Zelda game if Link had 4 legs. Wouldn't that be weird? The ancient land of Nippon is being menaced by the 8-headed dragon Orochi. The whole land is covered in shadow, and even the sun has gone missing. Fortunately, our wolf goddess has the power of the celestial brush, which she can use to paint missing objects into being, make plants bloom, or even draw the sun back into the sky. She is the sun goddess, after all. Each brush technique is guarded by a creature of the Chinese zodiac hidden in the sky, and they are all appropriately apologetic for not helping Emmy sooner. These skills are used to solve puzzles, but they're also useful in combat where different enemies are weak to different techniques and have to be finished off with a dramatic slash. This game will have you journey across all of Nippon, from the capital in Kyoto to the frozen tundra of Hokkaido, dealing with a variety of Japanese folk characters. As a Dragon Ball fan, I especially love this part where you climb the tower that would eventually inspire Korin's tower. As you solve problems for people and fight demons, you defeat the evil covering the land and bring color and life back to the world. This always happens in this very satisfying rush that sweeps away the gray. I love it every time. This game does have a slow start and a lot of talking, but the writing is also filled with humor. And despite being a goddess, Amaterasu is pretty silly. For a Japanophile like me, this game is a true treasure. In fact, this was the very year I started studying Japanese. And that eventually led me to working for a Japanese company, which I do now. 2007 was another good year for gaming, and we got some big franchise launching. Nintendo took Mario into space with the creative Mario Galaxy, and Retro finished off the Prime series with a bold but uneven attempt at motion controls. God of War 2 released, but it was still on the PS2, while Naughty Dog showed what the PS3 could do with the first Uncharted. In multi-platform games, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare took the series into the big time. Rock Band built upon the Guitar Hero format with an entire band, and Assassin's Creed dove into the Animus for the first time. 360 exclusives this year include Halo 3 and Mass Effect 1. That difficult cell chip architecture was really starting to hurt Sony here. Meanwhile, on the PC, Valve launched the Orange Box, a compilation containing the still final chapter for Gordon Freeman, the first big hero shooter with the cel-shaded Team Fortress 2, and an interesting experiment called Portal. But if you're looking for my pick, you'll have to check far beneath the waves. Would you kindly listen as I expound upon BioShock? This is a game that knows how to make a first impression. We start by crash landing in the middle of the northern Atlantic, frantically swimming to escape the flames and sinking airplane parts. Fortunately, we happen to crash next to this big, ominous lighthouse. With no other options, in we go, only to be greeted by the scowling face of Andrew Ryan. Ryan's influence looms large over this game. As we descend deep into the ocean, he tells about his philosophy and how it led him to build the City of Rapture. This marvel of mid-century engineering is a wonder of neon and extravagant Art Deco. The opening few shots of the city are beautiful, but as we get inside, we quickly learn things have gone to hell. Where BioShock excels most is in its environmental storytelling. As you skulk through the damp, decaying remains of this wonderful city, you find little vignettes telling the story of its tragic fall all around you. Taken together, they tell the tale of Ryan's ambitious and naive ideals brought low by the greed of unconstrained capitalism and his own pride. A story that gets more prescient by the day. You'll spend the game trying to escape a watery grave, jacking yourself up with gene splices that let you shoot lightning or fire from your hand just to stay ahead of the crazed populace that lost their mind doing the exact same thing. And then there's the Big Daddies, dangerous and mysterious brutes that protect the Little Sisters, who are the only ones that can harvest the deep-sea slug juice everyone's addicted to. The oppressive atmosphere of this game kept me on edge the whole way through, especially the constant ravings of the splicers ready to jump you at any moment. I won't spoil the big twist other than to say it was well executed, and unfortunately the back half of the game isn't as strong. Still, my memory of this game's impact make it an easy choice for 2007. 2007 was a famously good year for video games, and in general, the whole industry started to feel a lot more modern. It's 2008, so let's look at the games. GTA 4 came out and tried too hard to be realistic. Left 4 Dead was a cool competitive game that let you be the zombies. Dead Space took the best parts of RE4 and put them in space. Capcom released an NES-style Mega Man game that was pretty cool. Fallout got a modern sequel that preserved what made the series great. Solid Snake's story came to a melodramatic end. Banjo-Kazooie was a big disappointment. Burnout Paradise took the series open world for some smashing fun. Nintendo released the quirky and memorable Rhythm Heaven. And Spelunky took us cave diving into a randomly generated labyrinth in search of treasure. My pick for 2008 is a game that was still clinging to the PS2. An RPG not set in a fantasy world, but in the modern Japanese countryside. That's right, we're talking about Persona 4. My history with the series starts with 3, which caught my attention with its setting as I have always wanted to visit Japan. But the massive central dungeon was a bit monotonous. Persona 4 takes the good from 3 and builds upon it. To start with, there's the color palette. Each Persona game has a color that serves as its theme. 3 was blue and melancholic, 5 will be red and passionate, but 4 is yellow and joyful. This game's tone is always light, positive, and a little goofy, at least on the surface. Our avatar is sent to the sticks to live with his uncle for a year while his parents are abroad. The town of Inaba is small, but the game uses that to build an intimate world. You'll spend a lot of time on these few streets, talking to the same locals. It builds familiarity. Of course, you quickly make friends with an assortment of quirky characters, which is handy because you will need their help once people start disappearing. You see, there's a darker side to Inaba, an alternate world inside the TV filled with shadows of the real world. People who end up there don't usually make it out, but of course that doesn't apply to you because you're the most specialist boy. You have a persona. In these games, a persona is a manifestation of a part of your personality, but from a gameplay perspective, they're mostly Pokemon by way of Japanese folklore. At least this time you summon them with a card instead of an evoker. You'll team up with your friends to figure out what's happening to people, and along the way help them confront shameful aspects of their personality that manifest in the other world as strange dungeons and malevolent doppelgangers. The dungeons you explore are randomly generated, but better themed than 3, which does help. The problems you help people with are pretty serious. Family dynamics, gender identity, sexuality, and the game actually handles it pretty well. In between all that mess, you'll be living your life, attending school, joining clubs, making friends, building connections which empower your personas and help you in combat. This is a game that values the connections we make with others and explores the face we choose to show them, and I think that's cool. I will always remember my time in Inaba. The virtual year I spent there was during a difficult time in my life, and the friends I made there have stayed with me. Our adventures will not be forgotten. Perhaps someday I'll have the opportunity to visit Japan, and maybe even a town just like Inaba, and I'll be able to reflect on my time there. But for now, I'll just call it my game of the year. I've really come to love the Persona series, but man, these games are so long, it's hard to find the time for them. It's 2009, and this has been one of my hardest decisions yet, so for a change of pace, this time we're going to do honorable mentions in ascending order by how much I like each game. Starting with 2 games I never played, we have League of Legends and a sequel I just never got around to, and Assassin's Creed 2. We also have the humble start to an eventual phenomenon with Demon's Souls, but I still haven't jumped in. The iPhone's out, so phone games are starting to take off. We have Angry Birds and Plants vs. Zombies this year. Next we have Shadow Complex, a game that proved you don't have to be Nintendo or Konami to make a Metroidvania. The Infinite Guns of Borderlands. Red Faction Guerrilla and its wonderful demolition tech. Arkham Asylum manages to tell a proper Batman story. A silly game about blocks really took off. Bowser's Inside Story is the latest Mario RPG, and it had maximum Bowser, so it was amazing. Left 4 Dead 2 built on the first game and took the zombies to New Orleans. And believe it or not, Resident Evil 5 almost won this year purely on the back of what a great co-op game it was. Seriously, if you never played this game with a friend, you are missing out. I struggled with my choices this year because no one game stood out. Heart Gold and Soul Silver almost won, as it is my favorite Pokemon game. It was a great remake, bringing us back to Johto and Kanto, polished gameplay, the follow mechanic, but it's still a Pokemon game and we're playing it a little dull and grindy. I do still have my Pokemon for my playthrough, which makes me happy. In the end, and after much consideration, I went with Uncharted 2. Uncharted is not a complicated series. These are action movies. It's full of gunfights and snarky quips and big set pieces. The thing that makes that all work is Naughty Dog's attention to detail. The world is full of lush foliage and grimy, realistic worlds. The animations are fluid and reactive. 2 takes all that and polishes up for a globe-trotting adventure to find the lost city of Shambhala. Indiana Jones is an obvious influence, with a trail of artifacts and obscure historical knowledge leading to an impossible discovery. Let's talk about the bad, though. The combat is, frankly, frustrating. The enemies are bullet sponges that have a way of swarming you. The regenerative health means you will spend a lot of time hiding in black and white to recover. Frankly, I died a lot in this playthrough, and that wasn't much fun. Some people also don't like the climbing mechanic, but I find it satisfying. However, there are also amazing moments where this game really shines. Getting trapped in a collapsing building, playing cat and mouse with a tank in a Nepalese village, the wonderful train sequence that looks great and captures that feeling of fighting across train cars, the ridiculous convoy sequence where you're jumping between cars to stay alive. This is where Uncharted is at its best, giving you big action moments that you actually feel in control of. When it works, it feels like magic, a choreographed display of barely survived chaos. But when it doesn't and you have to reload multiple times to get it right, not so much. Some of my favorite parts of this game are the big, elaborate temples. These are all utterly implausible, but I don't care. I love the scale, the ancient mechanisms that still work somehow, slowly figuring out how it all goes together. When the puzzle finally falls into place, it feels so good, even if they aren't always as complicated as they appear. Something about it is just so satisfying to me. Uncharted 2 is not the best game of all time. It has its flaws, and I am not ignoring them. Instead, I am picking it for those highs, those moments where they manage to make you feel like an action star. I've never played another series that does it quite so well. That's what makes this my game of the year. Honestly, I'm surprised more Naughty Dog games didn't make this list. They're all so... We've made it to 2010, so let's get to those honorable mentions. Fallout New Vegas and Red Dead Redemption both released this year, and I hear they were quite good. And Kratos got to work out his daddy issues with Zeus in God of War 3. Nintendo followed up Mario Galaxy with a solid sequel, released the 5th generation of Pokemon, and put Retro Studios to work bringing back DK for Donkey Kong Country Returns. Blizzard released StarCraft 2, but wasn't able to make esports happen. Indie games are coming into their own with Super Meat Boy and VVVVVV, and phone games continue to happen, including Fruit Ninja and Cut the Rope. Yay? But this was the year BioWare released a leaner, much improved sequel that built on the world they had established and redefined the gameplay. This was the year we got Mass Effect 2. Let's start with the real highlight of this series, the writing. The future depicted in Mass Effect is one filled with wonderful technology, weird alien species, a massive galaxy to explore, and the same bigotry and greed we deal with now. That checks out. Joking aside, you can really feel the depth of lore they built for this game. It informs every aspect of the game and makes the galaxy feel cohesive and alive. That's not something you can say for our hero Shepard, who is promptly killed off when an alien menace blows the roof off the Normandy right in the beginning of the game. That's okay though, this creepy weirdo in a chair puts us back together again so we can do an impossible mission for him. But hey, impossible odds are kind of Shepard's thing, so he's off to recruit the best crew in the galaxy, so maybe he can make it out alive. Smartly, the game focuses its best writing on the characters and structures the entire game around recruiting and equipping them for that mission. Garrus is back and grumpier than ever, and my girl Tali has the confidence she was lacking in the last game. Not to be outdone by the veterans, Mordin Solus has a manic, determined energy that is so much fun. Jack is the most extra and angsty nonconformist ever. Thane has this whole calm assassin thing going. Legion brings a surprising humanity to the robotic Geth. Oh, and I guess Miranda and Jacob are here. They're fine. The game really revolves around these characters and your relationship with them. You'll be recruiting them and forming bonds with them throughout the game, between unraveling the mystery of the collectors and, of course, scanning planets. It's basically just a Western Persona. Conversations with this crew of oddballs never felt like a chore, and you really start to care about them. That makes the big suicide mission everything is building to really have a punch, because making the wrong decisions then can get them all killed for real. I have played through this game so many times just to see what the Paragon and Renegade options look like, and to spend a little more time with these characters that I love. Some years are easier than others, and there was never any doubt that Mass Effect 2 was going to be my game of the year. Not to just spoil my future picks, but with the way Mass Effect 3 went off the rails at the end and Andromeda's whole mess, this is the last win the series is going to get. I really hope they turn it around for the next game, but I am not confident at this point. It's 2011, and I know I'm going to be upsetting some people this time, so let's get right to it. This was the year of the game that wouldn't die, Skyrim. Sorry, I didn't like Oblivion and I never really tried this one. Uncharted 3 was a worthy end of the trilogy. Dead Space 2 was the spiritual successor to RE4 that RE5 couldn't be. Skyward Sword was disappointing in too many ways to get into right now. Rayman Origins was a solid reboot of a forgotten hero. Sonic Generations was the first really good Sonic game in a long time. Bastion was a remarkable first effort by Supergiant Games that deserves more time than I have in this video. And the aggressively gross but well-made roguelike The Binding of Isaac released. Unfortunately for all of them, my notes here indicate that there was another game that came out this year that was a huge success, namely Portal 2. When Valve released the Orange Box back in 2007, it included a funny little physics game called Portal. It felt more like an experiment than a game, a bite-sized little adventure built around the titular portals and a snarky, antagonistic AI named GLaDOS. When they announced a full-fledged sequel, it wasn't immediately clear how that would even work, but the sequel drops us right back into the questionable experiments of Aperture Science. They even use the exact same tutorial rooms as the first game, which lets them show how the facility has decayed over time. This game gives you a companion AI, Wheatley, who promises to get you to safety, but instead manages to wake up GLaDOS in a surprisingly chilling moment.
Oh, it's you.
She's obviously not happy that you blew her up in the first game, so it's right back to testing for you. In Portal 1, GLaDOS was mostly passive-aggressive, but now that you've killed her, she isn't bothering to be subtle. Instead, she's hilariously sarcastic and full of cutting quips about your parentage and weight that are designed to break your morale.
This plate must not be calibrated to someone of your generousness. I'll add a few zeros to the maximum weight.
There's these great details during these early tests as GLaDOS slowly pulls the facility back into shape around you. The game seems to be following the original's trajectory right up until you confront GLaDOS.
You brought something stronger than a portal gun this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid you're about to become the immediate past president of the Being Alive Club.
Fortunately, you pull the switcheroo on her and replace her with Wheatley. He goes mad way too quick, stuffs GLaDOS into a potato, and then dumps you into the basement for a tour of Aperture Science's wacky history, narrated by the recorded voice of company founder, shower curtain salesman, and massive blowhard.
Let me introduce myself. I'm Cave Johnson. I own the place.
I love the design of these old test chambers and the scale of these caverns they're set into. You'll have to use the portal gun and these questionable liquids to climb back out of the pit you've been dumped in. By the time you and GLaDOS make it back to the modern chambers, the whole place is falling apart, and Wheatley is literally slamming test chambers together just to keep things going. This whole game is great, stuffed with details and gags and creative uses for the portals. I especially love the finale moonshot. It's foreshadowed so well and such a satisfying conclusion. Portal 2 is a great game and a fantastic sequel, expanding on everything the first game did so well. It's just a shame Valve still hasn't learned how to count to 3. 2012 was supposed to be the apocalypse, but we're all still here, so let's look at some games. Mass Effect 3 had some great moments, but fumbled the ending of the trilogy. Mario had his first mainline multiplayer game, and it was infuriating. Sonic gave Mario Kart a run for his money with All-Star Racing Transformed. The Walking Dead presented a gripping and tragic narrative full of choice. Fez was supposed to be about perspective, but ended up being about language. XCOM brought the brutal fight against the Greys into the modern world. And in our phone corner, we had Clash of Clans, 10 Million, and the scourge upon humanity that is Candy Crush. My pick for 2012 is not a large game. It's the kind of game people call an art game to dismiss it, but I found it meaningful. Let's talk about Journey. Journey is unlike any other game I have picked so far. Most games are very mechanical. They have rules, goals, obstacles, enemies, power-ups, the things that make up a normal game. Journey does have these things. There is a goal. This mountain is a constant presence on the horizon, beckoning you towards it. You have abilities, a floaty jump and a communicative call. There are power-ups. These glowy things extend your scarf and lengthen your jump. However, to focus on the mechanics of this game is to miss what it is trying to do. Journey is less a game and more of an experience. The music that follows you and swells with the action, the gorgeous sand glowing in the warm sunlight, the burgeoning kinesthetic joy of flight or sliding down these slopes. It's all so beautiful. But there is more going on here, in hints and impressions. A lost civilization whose tragic history we only see glimpses of. The strange ecosystem of flora and fauna, all made of ribbon. And what is drawing you towards the mountain? Simple curiosity? The game seems to subtly ask that as the path grows more difficult. Most uniquely, you may not be traveling alone. You can meet fellow pilgrims on the journey, random and anonymous, with nothing but body language and your call to communicate with. These interactions are unique and organic. The game allows them but never forces them mechanically. In this particular playthrough, I met a fellow traveler who did not seem to know the game very well, and I felt like I was acting as a Sherpa, guiding him up the mountain and showing him the secrets that I still remembered. The game is attempting to convey this sense that connection is important, a feeling that cooperation and collaboration with others and the environment around you bring true strength. And the conflict can only lead to tragedy. Journey is wholly unique in what it seeks to accomplish, and the message it whispers to you as you travel seems especially relevant in 2025. If nothing else, this game invites us to focus not on the destination, but on the journey. It's ultimately a fairly linear game and not very long, but I've still found myself coming back to it a few times over the years. It's 2013 and we have a new set of consoles to consider. The name scheme here is particularly notable. PlayStation simply went with the PlayStation 4, but Microsoft went with the confusing Xbox One, which is of course different from the original Xbox, and Nintendo went with the Wii U, a name that just made people think the tablet controller was a new peripheral. Just make the names make sense, people. But we're really here to talk about the games. GTA 5 took us back to sunny San Andreas, but tried too hard to be grounded in realism. Naughty Dog took us on a perilous and sad journey through an America overrun by fungal zombies. Valve claimed ownership of a Warcraft 3 mod and made a ton of money. Assassin's Creed turned into a surprisingly good pirate game. Platinum Games gave us a cross between Bayonetta, Power Rangers, and Pikmin. The 6th generation of Pokemon released with Mega Evolutions and Fairies, but not enough new Pokemon. The Stanley Parable questioned what the point of games even is. Paper Please depicted the mundane cruelty of bureaucracy. Guacamelee gave us a cool luchador-themed Metroidvania. Mario got a great 3D game with the structure of the old 2D games. And Bioshock Infinite took us to the sky to learn how dangerous extreme nationalism mixed with religion can be. Elizabeth is great though. A lot of these games are great, but I'm excited because it's time to talk about Pikmin 3. The Pikmin games light up parts of my brain few other games can. Going all the way back to the original, the basic formula has been the same. You get stranded on this mysterious planet and you need the help of these tiny creatures called Pikmin to escape. It's unclear how so many people get stuck on this planet, but I'll take any excuse to spend time with the little guys. Pikmin are weak and defenseless individually, but when they are given direction, they can work together to do amazing things. To command them, all you have to do is throw them at an objective. They'll start attacking creatures no matter how big they are, like tiny maniacs, or start hauling treasure and food back to the base. Controlling them is more elegant than ever before, as the game lets you select which Pikmin you want to throw manually and lock onto targets. These changes make for more accurate throws and less frustrating mistakes. This time around, Olimar isn't the star. We have a new crew from a new planet. With 3 crew members, the game really allows us to multitask. You're able to give one crew member a command, and he will march off with his Pikmin while you take care of other things. I love that. It gives you the ability to be much more efficient. In addition to the usual red, blue, and yellow, the game also introduces rock Pikmin, which look adorable and can stun enemies. We also get the weird and bug-like pink Pikmin, which can actually fly. Instead of treasure or ship parts, this time you're on the hunt for fruit to stave off a famine back home. Everything in this game looks so detailed and great, but the fruit looks especially juicy. After removing the daytime limit in 2, your limited fruit supplies allow 3 to give you a flexible time limit that lengthens the more food you can find. This game also offers some truly large bosses, and defeating them feels like a real accomplishment. The best part is dragging your spoils back to camp afterwards like a conquering hero. This Switch release even has extra missions where you play as the original Pikmin hero Olimar. That's a nice touch. Pikmin is a series that has never received a ton of attention, but I have been a fan since the first game. Working together with Pikmin to take down beasts and collect treasure is such a simple joy. I'm glad to know the series has managed to keep going. Pikmin 3 is the first Pikmin to feel modern, and I am happy to name it my game of the year. Maybe it's my love of automation and logistics, or maybe it's just some latent megalomania. The Pikmin games always hit right for me. It's 2014, and it's only getting harder to mention all the important games. We got Shadow of Mordor and the very interesting Nemesis system. Bungie released Destiny, which seems to have had a rocky history. Alien Isolation made the Xenomorphs scary again. The PT demo released but never became a game. Nintendo released what is still the most recent Mario Kart even 11 years later. The cult phenomena Five Nights at Freddy launched, and I am not afraid to admit I don't get it. The Mega Man-inspired Shovel Knight launched. We also got Titanfall, Wolfenstein, The Stick of Truth, Child of Light, Hearthstone, Dragon Age Inquisition, Smash Bros. For both DS and Wii U, and the Banner Saga. Over in the phone corner, we had 3 solid games to highlight with Hitman Go, Crossy Road, and Threes. Whew, if I didn't pick any of those games, what did I pick? Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. If you've been watching these videos for a while, you might have noticed I tend to focus on story because that's something I care a lot about in my games. That's really not the case here, and it's never been DK's strong suit. In this game, DK Island gets invaded by a gang of Arctic creatures that freeze the whole island and kick DK off of it, so he's got to journey across the archipelago and retake his home. It's not exactly Shakespeare. Heck, it isn't even Sonic 3. No, Donkey Kong Country games have always been about the platforming. DK is no puny plumber. He's a big gorilla, and you can feel his momentum and weight when he jumps. That's not to say he's sluggish, though. Once you start rolling, he gets moving quick, so it's good that the controls are precise and snappy. DK's movements can really flow together as he climbs, swings, rolls, and bounces off enemies, and it all feels really good. Diddy Kong's back from the last game, and he gives DK a helpful hover jump and some extra HP when you rescue him. But this time, Dixie Kong is here too, with her helicopter hair that gains extra height, and Cranky Kong stops complaining long enough to help you with his distinct pogo jump. With 3 potential partners, you get to choose which best fits the level or your playstyle. Donkey Kong Country has always been a graphically impressive series, and Tropical Freeze looks especially nice. It's more than just the graphical fidelity, though. It's also the little details they fit into the background. There's always things to watch out for. The islands you visit each have distinct themes, and some even tell stories as you travel through them. I'll highlight the Juice Factory world that takes you all the way through their production process, and DK Island itself, which features frozen versions of the areas from Returns. Look at how great this silhouette level looks. They also brought in David Wise, who did music on the original DKC games, and it really shows. Some people were upset that Retro wasn't working on Metroid during this period, but I think what they achieved in this game is completely worth it. Donkey Kong Country might actually be Nintendo's most consistently high-quality series, all the way back to the Rare days. It definitely deserves to be my game of the year. The real question, though, is now that Retro is back working on Metroid, when are we ever going to get a new Donkey Kong game? It's 2015 and our lineup of games is noticeably different this year. I have less big notable games than usual, but we still got plenty to cover, so let's go. The Witcher 3 polished the rough edges of the previous games and found success. Bloodborne took a new approach to the Souls-like formula, but I only ever made it an hour in. Life is Strange was a fun narrative game with good music and cool time travel mechanics. Metal Gear Solid 5 dumped longtime voice actor David Hayter for Hollywood actor Kiefer Sutherland, and it just felt gross. Until Dawn was a playable slasher game where you could get everyone killed. Crypt of the Necrodancer merged rhythm games and roguelikes with some killer music. Kerbal Space Program demonstrated how hard it is to build a working rocket. Nintendo gave their fans the tools to make their own damn Mario game. Splatoon was a fresh take on multiplayer in a really creative world. Ori was a beautiful Metroidvania, and Downwell made falling with style into a game. For my pick this year, I thought I'd go with a game that I have never seen discussed on the internet, a little game programmed by a single person that deserves some attention. This overlooked gem is Undertale. Undertale appears at first glance to be an old-school RPG. The sprite graphics, text boxes, and black background are giving Earthbound. Undertale sets its tone early when this homicidal flower tries to end you. This is a game full of surprises that is willing to lie to you. The tutorial continues to keep you guessing as the motherly Toriel leads you through the ruins. She solves the early puzzles for you out of concern for your health, and, crucially, she encourages you to resolve your conflicts without fighting. This is Undertale's core gimmick. You don't have to kill anyone, and just by giving you that option, it calls into question every other RPG you have ever played. I mean, in Super Mario RPG, the Goombas do have personalities. One of them even runs a shop. In Chrono Trigger, the mystics you fight talk about how they are oppressed, and only Magus claims to help them. It kinda makes you think. Of course, the game never forces you to show mercy. You can fight the creatures you encounter like any other RPG, gain LV, grow stronger, but it doesn't want you to. Undertale goes out of its way to give characters endearing personalities, so you won't want to hurt them either. Toriel is the big test here. She's nothing but nice to you, and when she stands in your way, it is clear she is trying to protect you. What isn't immediately obvious is how to avoid hurting her. I definitely didn't figure it out the first time through. Clearly you already hurt her emotionally, but when push comes to shove, she refuses to hurt you. I'm fascinated by this combat system, which turns fights into impromptu bullet hell encounters. It manages to be flexible enough to keep the mercy route interesting, while also finding ways to express story beats and actual emotion just through mechanics. This is, frankly, genius. It feels effortless. I suspect an average player the first time through will do some fighting and gain some LV, and the extra health does make the game easier. The pacifist run is much harder, but being kind is often the harder path. I could go on about Undertale, the way it constantly keeps you guessing, the bizarre world you travel through, the wonderful double act of Sans and Papyrus, the intimidating Undyne, the music. Few games manage to have the personality and vision that Undertale achieves. Few games manage to be genuinely funny like Undertale, and I never expected to care about these characters as much as I came to. Underneath all the oddball humor, there's a story about intolerance and how it can tear people apart, and those acts of kindness you can commit throughout the game have the ability to spark real change. I adore this silly, wonderful game. I consider it one of the greatest of all time, so of course it has to be my game of the year. And no, I could never do an evil run in this game. It's just not right. As I make this video, I'm still eagerly anticipating the next chapters of Deltarune so I can see what fresh madness springs out of Toby Fox's head. We've reached 2016 and gaming has really started to diversify. We still have big AAA games like the solid Uncharted 4, the surprisingly good Doom reboot, and the criminally underrated Titanfall 2. Overwatch took the hero shooter mantle from TF2 and captured attention with its fun characters. This was also the year The Last Guardian released after years of delays, and No Man's Sky also had its rocky release. A lot of the best games this year, though, were smaller. Stardew Valley modernized the farming sim and hooked so many with its cozy aesthetics. Firewatch told a compelling mystery out in the woods with some good writing. The Witness was full of ingenious and maddening puzzles. And Inside was a fun little adventure with a really creepy ending. The Pokemon machine was still rolling and now finally in 3D with Sun and Moon, but the Pokemon game that took over the world was on our phones, Pokemon Go. My pick this year is also a smaller game, and the first multiplayer one on my list too. Let's talk about Overcooked! Overcooked is pure distilled chaos. You're thrown in a kitchen with up to 3 friends and asked to pump out orders as they come in. The menu is not that complicated. In fact, in the beginning, you're just making soup. The controls are simple. You can move, interact, and run. Where the game goes off the rails is the kitchens themselves. It starts off relatively normal in a restaurant kitchen. Soon, though, you are working in an open-air kitchen with pedestrians getting in the way, or on a pirate ship where everything is sliding around, or on the back of these trucks speeding down the highway. Overcooked is all about inconveniencing you. You need to grab ingredients, chop them, cook them, plate them, but rarely are these stations all laid out in a logical way. You have to learn to make sense of each suboptimal kitchen to fill the orders. This is where teamwork comes in. You'll need to work together to prep and cook, passing food across counters and delegating tasks as best as you can. This is where things tend to fall apart, and also what I love about it. Sitting on the couch yelling at my friends as we struggle to make a burger together is one of the most memorable experiences of my gaming career. No matter how well you plan things out, in the midst of the chaos, something always goes wrong, especially on these damn ice levels. This is the kind of game I love to break out when I have friends over. The controls are simple, the graphics are cartoony, but the gameplay is serious business. The levels are short too, so your failures feel more funny than demoralizing. I have spent some time working in professional kitchens, and that is its own special brand of madness. Maybe that's why I relate to this game so much. I am cheating slightly here because I have the combo pack that includes the sequel in the same package, and that's usually how I play it. And with everything they have added, there are dozens of levels to drive yourself crazy trying to figure out. Just one more try, guys. We've got it this time. These are the kind of multiplayer games I love the most, where you and your friends are thrown into a completely ridiculous situation. You're just trying to make things work. This would be so much more stressful if you were competing against another team, so I'm glad that's not an option. We've made it to 2017, so let's look at some of the highlights for the year. They let the fans make a Sonic game, and it was an amazing celebration of his history. The hand-painted shmup Cuphead finally released, and it was a real treat. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds kicked off the Battle Royale trend, but Fortnite managed to pivot and completely ate its lunch. Mass Effect went to the Andromeda Galaxy, but the whole thing felt kind of incomplete. Horizon Zero Dawn gave us a stunningly beautiful post-apocalyptic world full of robot dinosaurs and a tragic sci-fi backstory. Resident Evil 7 took things back to basics for a proper horror story. And Nintendo finally exited their flop era with the Switch. The Switch had one of Nintendo's best console launch lineups in a good long time. Believe it or not, this is the first time Nintendo had a 3D Mario game in their console's launch year lineup since the Nintendo 64. Crazy. Odyssey was a creative spin on the Mario formula, but my pick for this year was a breath of fresh air. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. When Nintendo started talking about Breath of the Wild, they sounded years behind. Do you see that mountain over there? You can go to it! Exactly the kind of thing we'd heard so many times before about so many other open-world games. It turned out that Nintendo was onto something. Breath of the Wild throws away the Zelda formula that had become so established and looked all the way back to the original to build something new. Changes start quick as we don't name our main character. This is Link, and he has a history in this world, even if he can't remember it. We awaken in this weird shrine, pick up a tablet and some pants, and are led out into the Great Plateau to learn about the world. This intro is genius. It gives us a microcosm of the larger world to get our bearings and doesn't hold our hand the way so many previous games have. Sure, this old man is here to push us in a suggested direction, but you can't just ignore him and explore the world. The game trusts you to make choices even if they're wrong. And this game really is about that sense of exploration and adventure. To reinforce that, traditional Zelda dungeons have been removed completely and replaced by these shrines which are dotted all over Hyrule. They serve as bite-sized puzzles that explore the game's mechanics as well as your fast travel points. It always feels exciting when you stumble upon one of these or find one you've been searching for a while. The first 4 here on the Great Plateau give you your abilities. Cryosis, which makes blocks of ice, Magnesis, which manipulates metal, Stasis, which stops time, and bombs. They explode. I love the way this game introduces powerful abilities with a variety of applications, but if I'm honest, I was a little shocked that you never find more. With the first 4 shines out of the way, we were given our paraglider and some backstory and dumped out into the world. The game gives you a goal of defeating Ganon and a nudge towards Kakariko Village, but you can go wherever you want. My first playthrough, I ignored that and went for the giant bird in the sky because that seemed interesting. The trick that makes this game work so well is the same one Odyssey used, actually. They put things everywhere. Around every corner there's another shrine, a treasure chest, a monster, or one of the hundreds of Koroks. It's so easy to get lost in this world, following whatever catches your eye on the horizon. I like this so much more than chasing endless icons on the map like in other open world games. To enhance that sense of exploration, they also give Link the ability to climb everything, and I can't help but tackle these vertical cliffs just to see what's at the top. The game isn't perfect. The weapons always seem to break too soon, and this game's dungeons are a big departure. The 4 divine beasts are conceptually cool, and I like the way you have to manipulate them to solve puzzles. Unfortunately, finding these terminals is just not that interesting, and we don't get any unique items from them, and they just don't scratch the itch of a well-designed Zelda dungeon. Even with those complaints, I poured so much time into exploring this vast world and all the interesting things they packed into it. There's so much here that I missed big chunks of it the first time through, and I think it's cool that you can go back and find even more to do the second time through. Nintendo took a risk with this game, but in my mind, it really paid off, and that's why it's my game of the year. To be clear, I don't want every Zelda game moving forward to be like this. I really miss the dungeons and the items, and I hope they find a way to combine these two styles of Zelda games in the future. It's 2018, and there's less big games to talk about, but plenty of good ones. Red Dead Redemption 2 sought to immerse players in a stunningly detailed Old West, and Insomniac gave us a truly amazing Spider-Man game. Nintendo went all out, and Sakurai gave us the most maximalist version of Smash Bros. Possible. So glad my boy Ridley finally made it in, but where are Geno and Chrono? In smaller games, Celeste had tight platforming and a moving story. Donut County was a silly little game about a small town of animals menaced by a hungry hole. Overcooked 2 was better than the first one, but I'll spare you the details. And Hogwarts Mystery was a mobile Harry Potter game that meant to give you your own Hogwarts story, but it was held back by predatory microtransactions. I still played so much of it though. I didn't pick a smaller game this year. I picked a blockbuster sequel to a popular series that reinvented itself completely. That's right, it's God of War. Kratos is a character with history. Over the course of his previous games, he ran a crusade of violence and rage through the Greek pantheon that left nothing behind, and the ending felt pretty final. This game manages to find the perfect angle to build on all of that. Kratos is older now. He's still angry, but that rage now lies beneath a sense of sadness and regret. Voice actor Christopher Judge masterfully conveys the complex emotions Kratos struggles with throughout this game, and it all feels so much more mature than the younger, more shouty Kratos. That gives this game some emotional depth it needs, because this is a story about grief. We catch up with Kratos just after his wife dies for unknown reasons. Kratos and his son Atreus are determined to fulfill her dying wish of spreading her ashes from a mountaintop, but Kratos doubts his son's abilities to make that trip. Those doubts go out the window when this crazy stranger attacks them, so they're off on their journey. The camera in this game is so much closer to Kratos than previous games, and that gives us a sense of intimacy needed for the story they're telling. Kratos is a Spartan warrior at heart, and not used to dealing with emotions, or even his own child. Their relationship is at the heart of this game, and you can see it grow in conversations peppered throughout. They work hard to put character moments between fights to keep the focus on our central duo. Kratos is a stranger in a strange land, an interloper in Allfather Odin's realm. Norse mythology feels so strange and esoteric here, and they really lean into it. We get the highlights like Yggdrasil, the Bifrost, and Joromundur, the World Serpent, and the stranger turns out to be the invincible Boulder. Kratos' constant indifference to all this madness is amusing, and Atreus is often the only one who knows what's going on. We hear a lot about Odin and Thor. Their past actions hang over the story, but they do not appear in person. Combat has been completely reworked. The Blades of Chaos are gone, replaced by the Leviathan Axe. This thing is so much fun to use that I don't even mind. I love the way you can throw and recall it at will. This gets used both in combat and puzzles to freeze things, and it adds a lot of variety. When the axe is otherwise occupied, Kratos beats monsters with his fists, and when done right, this all flows together into a beautiful symphony of violence. Atreus is constantly at your side, eager to help. He's not much help at the beginning, but his skills grow steadily and eventually becomes quite an asset with his bow. Even though the perspective and tone are different, we still get the big moments that are befitting for the God of War. Kratos takes this dragon on like a boss, and there's this neat area built around this ancient dead giant. The real highlight for me is when Kratos is forced to travel to the icy realm of Helheim, and his ice axe just won't cut it. With no other options, Kratos confronts his own past and wields the Blades of Chaos once more as the ghost of Athena looks on in disdain. As a longtime fan of the series, this took me completely by surprise, and it was perfect fan service. I would have been happy with just the axe, but bringing the blades back really made the game feel complete. And I haven't even talked about all the RPG mechanics they added to the optional open-world exploration. God of War is a game that doesn't just honor its own legacy, it manages to bring depth to the bombacity of the previous games by handling them with thoughtful maturity. That's something I never expected this series to be capable of, and that's what makes this my game of the year. Honestly, I was really shocked by how well this game came together, and I really need to play Ragnarok soon. We've made it to the last row, and we're getting to some very recent games now. Jedi Fallen Order was the first proper take on a single-player Star Wars game in a while. Kingdom Hearts 3 brought the trilogy to a messy, confusing end. Kojima released the very weird Death Stranding. Nintendo released a new Mario Maker with a bunch more stuff but worse UI. Tetris 99 merged Battle Royale with the classic puzzle game. Astroneer was a fun planetary exploration game. There's Slay the Spire, a great but very challenging deck-building roguelike. There's Dicey Dungeons, a weird but fun dice-based roguelike game. Pokemon finally made it to the home console with Sword and Shield, and Outer Wilds hit a cool mystery in its clockwork solar system. My pick this year is from a series that has been chugging along since the original NES, slowly improving and gaining steam until this year we got Fire Emblem: Three Houses. Like most Westerners, my first introduction to Fire Emblem was in Smash Bros. Melee. Marth and Roy felt so different from the rest of Nintendo's characters. They didn't even speak English. That uniqueness carries over to their proper series. Fire Emblem games are basically character-based strategy games starring anime characters. I missed out on most of these games. When I found out this one was set in a weird anime school, I was sold. This is Garreg Mach, a vaguely European monastery and officer school for students from the 3 surrounding countries. Through some coincidental bullshit, you, a young mercenary with 0 teaching experience, are convinced to join the school as a professor by this definitely not suspicious lady with green hair. Yep, that's an anime plot alright. Your first order of business is to pick which of the 3 classes you'll be in charge of. There's the Blue Lions, led by this blonde stick-in-the-mud Dimitri, the Golden Deer, led by pretty boy Claude, and the correct choice, the Black Eagles, led by best girl Edelgard. Each class has its own roster of weird and quirky characters as well, and they all need your help to become good little soldiers. Yeah, when you lay it all out like that, it almost sounds weird, but I'm into it. Much like Persona, this game is structured around the school year. Each month, you and your class will have a mission to complete, but outside of that, you will spend your time teaching classes, exploring the monastery grounds to fish and grow plants, and of course, getting to know your students. They all have quirks that help them stand out, like Bernadetta, who doesn't like getting close to people, so of course, she becomes an archer. Combat in this game is heavily based on positioning, and when you can coax an enemy into attacking your fortified position, it feels good. Your class earns experience based on participation, and that means winning isn't enough. You need to find ways to get your weak characters involved or they will never get stronger. That helps even the easy battles stay engaging. Oh, and did I mention the mysterious girl in your head that can turn back time when you mess up? The story in this game isn't exactly award-winning, but the characters make it fun. The story even branches based on which house you picked, and that along with the new Game Plus feature gives you reasons to replay. For me, what really works in this game is that routine you develop of circling the school grounds to see what your students are up to and helping them learn new skills to grow into stronger versions of themselves. I wouldn't call myself the biggest Fire Emblem fan, but I enjoyed the hell out of this game. It's a shame Engage wasn't very good. Strategy games aren't usually my thing. I played some Age of Empires and StarCraft and even Europa Universalis, but apparently what I really needed were anime girls. I'm not afraid to admit what I like. Look, 2020 was a hell of a year. Technically, the PS5 released this year, but the way generations have been working, we didn't get very many big new games made for it. Ghost of Tsushima looked really cool, and The Last of Us got a sequel, but I haven't had a chance to play either of them yet. The long-awaited Final Fantasy VII Remake made an entire game out of just the Midgar section. Cyberpunk 2077 came out pretty broken, but none of these were even next-gen exclusives. Nintendo released a Battle Royale version of Super Mario Bros. That for some reason no longer exists. Valve released a VR-exclusive Half-Life prequel that took great advantage of the medium, but the headsets are just too damn expensive for most people. And we got some silly but fun multiplayer games with Fall Guys and Among Us. My pick this year is from a small studio known for making high-quality story-based games. This year, though, they released a roguelike called Hades. Like most roguelikes, Hades expects you to fail. That's not just true of the game, but the Greek god as well. You play as his son Zagreus, who has decided he is sick of the dreary underworld and is determined to escape to the surface. This mostly seems to annoy Hades, but he doesn't seem too worried about your chances. And rightfully so, the ascent is not easy. You fight room by room through the undead, dodging their attacks and getting your own in while trying not to get overwhelmed. These rooms can get very hectic. Each of the 4 areas you have to pass through to get to the surface is guarded by a boss, and they are all pretty tough. Meg isn't too bad, but this Bone Hydra is overwhelming, and Theseus and the Minotaur are constantly attacking you from your blind spot. It's so frustrating. So yes, you will die. A lot. But that's where the magic of this game comes into play. Supergiant Games are known for their storytelling, and they challenge themselves to work that into a game where you are constantly losing. Zagreus is a god, so he can never really die. He just gets sent back home where his father can gloat over his failures. Each time you return to the House of Hades, you can talk with residents like Hypnos and Nox and learn a little bit more about what's going on around there. Zagreus has questions, but nobody seems willing to answer them. You get that drip feed of content every time you die, and it almost makes you look forward to failing, because you can see what's going on back home. But each failure will also give you the chance to grow stronger. You'll unlock more bonuses to start your runs with, new and unique weapons to try, healing spots to rest along your journey, trinkets that grant buffs, and the gods are on your side as well, which is fairly suspicious. Zeus, Athena, Dionysus, Aphrodite, Artemis, Poseidon, they're all here to offer help for unknown reasons. Their gifts alter and improve your abilities in different ways, which makes each run feel unique. With enough persistence, you can eventually escape the gates of hell. I won't spoil what happens, but that is not the end of the game. Toiling against the gods on a futile errand feels very Greek myth. The tight, well-balanced combat, the gorgeous graphics, the urge to do just one more run to maybe make it out this time, it always keeps me coming back for more. Hades is an excellent roguelite that pushed the genre forward in presentation. Now if they'll just finish the sequel so we can find out what happened to my man Zag. An update actually just came out while I was working on this project. I promised myself I would finish the video before I start the update. So far on this list I've been trying to mention what feel like important games, but now that we're in 2021 it's hard to know which games will have a lasting impact. Apparently there was an Infinite Halo game this year, but I never hear anyone talk about it. Deathloop looked cool, but did anyone play it? What about the 6th Far Cry? The 5th Forza? Is Monster Hunter popular now? I see that tall lady all over the internet, but was Resident Evil 8 good? I mean, they finally made a second Psychonauts. Is everyone just playing Fortnite still? The past few years I haven't had as much time for new games as I would like, and my backlog has grown, so I am really asking. But you know what I did play this year that was amazing? Metroid Dread. I don't know why it has been so hard to get a new Metroid game made, but this one is fantastic. They resurrected the name of a dead project and forgot about Other M to give us a sequel to Fusion. Unbelievably, this is the first original 2D Metroid with a proper Metroidvania map since Super Metroid. That's 27 years! We kicked this game off descending down to an alien world to investigate the X-Parasites, a gelatinous menace so dangerous that only the Metroids could keep them in check. Samus is immediately attacked by a mysterious assailant who turns out to be a Chozo. That was a real shock. I always sort of assumed they were extinct, but Ravenbeak here is very real and very angry. Samus wakes up sometime later with no memory of how she escaped, and we're off on an adventure to escape this planet. Samus must have been training since Fusion, because she's learned some new tricks. She can now mount small ledges automatically and slide through gaps. Combined with her snappy jump, it gives her a real fluidity of motion. She also has free aim and her counter ability, which gives her some real flexibility in combat. The caverns Samus travels through have a real depth to them that gives them a sense of space, and it all looks gorgeous. The AI Adam is back from Fusion, but he's much less obnoxious this time. Mostly we get to just dig into exploration. Samus gets some cool new abilities like a wall climb and this air dash, which is great for dodging, and her old abilities have been improved like the grapple beam, which is now much more flexible and versatile. And then there's the titular Dread, courtesy of these Emmy robots. These invulnerable menaces chase Samus relentlessly, but only in designated zones. Entering one of these really heightens the tension as you will have to avoid confrontation at all costs. Worse, each of these Emmy uses one of Samus's own abilities against her. If you're caught, you'll only have a small window to counter and escape. The goal here is to elude them long enough to find these special rooms that contain mini mother brains. Defeat them and you'll get the extra energy you need to fry these mechanical nightmares. I get the sense people don't like this part of the game, but I appreciate the unique energy they bring to the game, even if it stresses me out. This game is so well paced. The world is so interconnected that you're always finding shortcuts back to where you need to be if you look carefully. The bosses make for good challenges too. I love the way countering their attacks leads into these cool cinematic sequences where you can get some free hits in. And look, Kraid's back. Why? Don't care! Nothing in this game phases Samus. She is a professional on a mission and she is so cool you can forget about the mopey, whiny Samus from that game we don't speak of. I love this game from top to bottom. It takes the franchise in some great directions with gameplay and story. We learn a lot about the Chozo, and we confront our final boss. He's wearing power armor just like Samus. What an epic fight. Damn, I meant to play just a little of this game to record footage and end up replaying the whole thing for like the 5th time. It's just plain fantastic, and easily my game of the year. I hope Retro makes something just as cool for Prime 4. We've reached 2022, and we're a little light on notable games. Horizon got a really strong sequel that wasn't groundbreaking. Kratos faces Ragnarok, but I haven't had a chance to play it yet. Cult of the Lamb mixed a roguelike with a cult management sim. Kirby got his first 3D game ever. People keep telling me Elden Ring is quite good, but I haven't played it yet either. I seriously considered giving the prize to Pokemon Legends Arceus just because of how fresh it felt and how much I enjoyed catching Pokemon in that game, but ultimately it just felt like a first draft. So what did I pick? What do I consider the best game of 2022? I'm really not sure why I'm doing this to myself, but give me a chance, give me just a couple minutes to make a case for Overwatch 2. Okay, look, there are a lot of negative things I could say about this game. Was the development mismanaged? Absolutely. They lie about the status of story content. Yes, and that still stings. Does the shop feel like a cash grab? Definitely, especially with the overpriced collabs. I don't deny any of that, but back in the fall of 2022, most of that had not come to light just yet. So the question is, what did we actually get in 2022? Overwatch 2 is technically a sequel to Overwatch, a game that took the internet by storm with its collection of appealing heroes and the signature Blizzard polish. For the sequel, they shook things up, most notably by dropping the team size down to 5v5, which was a contentious move. Overwatch 2 also launched with 3 new heroes, Sojourn, Kiriko, and Junker Queen. We got the traditional high-quality cinematic for all 3, and each of them felt unique. I don't really vibe with Sojourn, but I love Kiriko's teleport and Suzu. When you can combine them to rescue a teammate at the last moment, it feels so good. Junker Queen comes with a boomerang knife that looks quite familiar, and along with her axe, it enables a very aggressive gameplay that I really enjoy. So what is it about this game that made me pick it? I've never had an interest in military shooters. The aesthetics just don't appeal to me. but Overwatch, with its fantastical elements and variety of weapons, just hits right for me. It's the first and only online multiplayer game on this list. I have played Overwatch since around 2017, and Team Fortress before that, so I have a history with the hero shooter genre. I love the way these games can feel so different when you switch characters, and learning to play a new hero was like playing a completely new game. Just this past year, I picked up Pharah, and I love her mobility. Learning to stay in the sky and finding new angles to rain rockets on the other team feels amazing. And that's really what does it for me, the feeling of these characters. Using Moira's orbs and Fade just right to stay alive in a hectic battle. Cycling in my shields as Sigma to control the battlefield. Frying people with Zarya's beam when it's all charged up. Wading into a mob of enemies as Junker Queen and coming out alive. Relentlessly punching through barriers with Ramatra. Look, I have a twitchy hand, and it makes aiming hard, so the fact that some of these characters don't rely as much on accuracy allows me to get those moments where I can pop off and get that dopamine hit that really energizes me. I have gotten better, but sometimes I still need a hero like Moira that isn't as aim dependent, and you better believe my healing numbers are solid. I really enjoy when I'm able to make a difference on my team and help contribute to our victory. That does mean I take it a little hard when I have a few bad games in a row sometimes. Look, Overwatch is not in a great place. The updates come out a bit slow, they don't have the numbers of Fortnite, they've given up on the story, but they're still releasing new modes and new heroes. Juno came out last year, and learning to aim well enough to be effective with her was really rewarding. This is also the only multiplayer game my partners are into, and the many nights we have spent in quick play definitely have something to do with my affection for this game. I'm not going to try and tell you Overwatch is a perfect game. As I record this, Blizzard has just announced a bunch of new-ish things for the year, like perks and the return of loot boxes. For real though, I'm excited about the loot boxes. I miss them. So far, the perks have been a fun and fresh addition to the game, and I'm hoping this is the start of a turnaround, because I've tried Morphle Rivals and it just doesn't feel right to me. It feels like a mobile game. And for better or worse, Overwatch still feels like a Blizzard game. I refuse to give in to cynicism, and I'll continue to love it for its best elements while not ignoring the flaws. We're coming down to the end now, and if you haven't bailed on me for picking Overwatch, let's go through some highlights and I'll get to a non-controversial pick. Nintendo had one of their strongest years in quite some time with Pikmin 4, Super Mario Wonder, and Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild is better, but they're both still fun. We had some big-name sequels with Diablo 4 and Final Fantasy 16. There was the cool, cel-shaded Hi-Fi Rush. Weirdly, 2 different games about exploring the ocean in Dredge and Dave the Diver. The excellent Resident Evil 4 remake. Sorry, Leon, you're not going to win twice. So if not any of those games, what game could have possibly... Baldur's Gate 3. Damn, where did this game even come from? I never played the older D&D games, so it wasn't on my radar at all, but Larian Studios rolled a nat 20 and just took over my life for months. Where do I even begin? Well, the character creator, obviously. This is only the second game on my list that had one. Definitely going with the horns. After getting a tadpole shoved in your eye, you wake up on this weird squid ship being chased through hell by dragons. That's proper metal. After meeting a brain with legs, an angry frog, and a goth girl in a tube, a bossy squid gives you bad instructions and you crash the whole damn thing on a beach and wake up alone. From that moment forward, the adventure is mostly up to you. This game is defined by choice. Shadowheart's right there, but you can just ignore it if you want to. If you don't trust the hand sticking out of the portal, you don't have to help it, and then poor Gale is gone forever. Sorry, Gale. I'm sure someone likes you. That's the ethos of this game. It wants to bring the D&D experience to life as best it can in a video game. There are so many ways you can take things off the rails. We accidentally picked a fight with this shopkeep in the Grove on our first playthrough because my girlfriend kept stealing things. That flexibility for shenanigans is endless. In theory, you'll spend the adventure trying to get this tadpole out of your head, but more likely you'll get sidetracked by the world and the characters. Every corner you stick your nose into has some random quest or at least a bit of loot for you to find. The companions you meet along the way are all fun. Astarion, Shadowheart, and Karlach have all become deservedly beloved. I really like the prickly Lae'zel and the whole wounded warrior thing she has going on. This game scratched that itch left behind by Mass Effect, traveling with a bunch of weirdos and learning their unique stories. Each of your companions has depth and layers that you can peel back if you spend the time to get to know them. And unlike Mass Effect, you can piss these guys off and make them leave if you do something really bad. Again, consequences. Larian Studios also strove to adapt combat as accurately as possible, using the classic classes and abilities of D&D with some meaningful tweaks to account for the digital conversion. Knowledge of D&D really helps here, and you can min-max yourself to ridiculous levels if you want to. With so many options, it's a lot of fun exploring what different builds can do. And of course, it wouldn't be D&D without choices. Larian chose to show us the literal dice rolls behind our persuasion and deception checks, and watching them bounce around the screen adds a unique flavor to things. You can talk yourself in and out of a lot of situations. Many combat encounters can be avoided, and many peaceful situations can turn sour if you say the wrong thing. Unlike older RPGs, there's no morality meter here. This game tracks your decisions on a much more granular level. The whole world feels reactive to you, and your journey to Baldur's Gate can change so much. There's so much going on in this game that I think everyone finds something else about it that speaks to them. Me? I fell in love with the psychotic drow Minthara. She has this no-nonsense, pragmatic approach to violence that I find so much fun. I've definitely raided a village or two with her. That's what makes this game so special, that remarkable flexibility. And hell, Minthara is only a companion because people liked her so much in early access that they fleshed her out. That's so cool. Baldur's Gate 3 is a groundbreaking game that proves an RPG can be good without compromising the experience with microtransactions or online bullshit. Looking at you, Dragon Age. We need more games like this, and I can't wait to see what Larian comes up with next. Well, here we are at the end of the road. I've covered 35 years of gaming history, and now we're going to talk about last year. So what came out? Nintendo released the experimental Echoes of Wisdom, giving Zelda her first starring role. The poker roguelike Balatro very nearly took the air for its amazingly addictive gameplay loop. Helldivers 2 had a unique approach to what a live service game can look like. There were some popular games I haven't played yet, like Black Myth Wukong and Metaphor ReFantazio. What is with these names? There was also a new Mario and Luigi game that I need to get to, and an apparently great 3D platformer with Astrobot. My pick this year is a game that hijacked my brain like no other, and finally hit full release after years of early access. Satisfactory! Satisfactory belongs to what I would call logistic games. You're dropped alone on an alien planet by your corporate overlords and tasked with exploiting its resources with maximum efficiency. It's a beautiful world filled with exotic creatures, and it's up to you to extract its resources for the good of humanity. Trust the company. They know what's best. So you get started by locating some iron and mining it by hand. You build a base of operations with a workbench to refine minerals. That isn't very efficient though, so very quickly you begin automating things. You build mining rigs to automate resource extraction, smelters to automate refinement, and constructors to process that into usable forms like plates and rods. Now we're making progress, and we can begin our main project, a space elevator. So big, so fancy. Now our job is to get the resources into orbit so they can be used to save humanity, somehow. So we build ever more complex layouts of machines to construct ever more complex components. Reinforced plates, modular frames, rotors, stators, motors. We upgrade to steel for more advanced parts, but this takes power, so you cut down trees for fuel and build more, and cut down more trees for fuel, but this still isn't enough, so you start mining coal, but that needs water, so out come the pumps and the pipes. Now we have a proper factory going, but we need plastic, which means we need oil, but that's so far away we have to build a tractor and head off to find it, and build refineries to turn the crude into rubber and plastic and fuel, but we need to get all that back to base to build computers, so I guess we have to build a train. And we need screws to put that all together, so we make screws, but it isn't enough, so we make more screws and more screws and more screws, but it's never enough, and there's these weird alien devices that whisper strange thoughts into your ear, and if you study them, you can build dimensionally transcendental storage spaces. You can build more, so you can launch resources into space, but we need more power, and uranium hurts so much, and why is that spider so big? Ahem. I'm okay. I spent 2 weeks playing this game for this video, and it was a struggle to stop and put this together. If that isn't the sign of a great game, I don't know what is. Satisfactory is a fantastic open-world logistics game. Better than Factorio or Infinifactory or Shapes or any of a million other similar games, at least in my opinion. It's a game that pushes you to create increasingly complex tangles of machines and wires and conveyor belts to build more stuff, and I love it. Oh, and it has multiplayer too, but I've never tried it. Wow, we made it through that entire video game, and if you watched the entire thing, you are now contractually obligated to like and subscribe. Please also comment down below what your favorite video game is. I'd love to hear that. I love hearing other perspectives. Also, let me know what the objectively wrong choices I made, because some of them were really hard. And if you have enjoyed hearing me ramble on about video games for this long, you should really be subscribed over at Blue Sky to hear what I'm working on, and TikTok and Twitch to see other things I'm working on. I really like talking about video games. I want to talk about more video games. I'm going to be doing that. Here at Varick Incorporated, our motto is entertainment for humans. So if you're a human, you're in the right place. Some of the other projects I want to work on, I want to cover some of the games that didn't get covered in this series. There's a lot of great stuff that I just didn't have time to talk about because it was already such a long video. So look out for that. I'll also be starting a new Let's Play on Mario and Luigi Brothership, which is a game that has been in my backlog. A lot of backlog games that I need to cover. So that should be fun. And honestly, if you have watched this entire video, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed putting it together, and I just hope other people enjoy watching it. So thank you, and I will see you next time.